Okay, geometry fans, our topic for today, actually for geometry, we're going to do an algebra review. So we're going to go over several different topics, solving linear equations and proportions. We're going to talk about slope from a line if you have a graph or by using the formula, and we will do a little bit of graphing linear equations. Now the first thing we'll do, though, let me tell you your corny joke of the day. The question is, why did the pirate go to the Caribbean? And the answer is to get some R and R. All right, so here we go. Let's start with solving equations. And what I've got here is just a bunch of examples that we're going to go through. The idea of an equation, when you see that equal sign, the idea is that the left-hand side and the right-hand side have the same value. So what I do first is I usually draw a line straight down. So what I want to do is break up the left-hand side from the right-hand side. My goal is to get the x by itself. I want x equals and then some kind of number on the other side. So to do that, I need to first move these numbers. Now the one that I do first, I move what's called the constant. Okay, the constant I'll write down. That's the number that does not have a variable. So in this case, the constant is positive 3. So to move that, I'm going to subtract 3. The idea is that I am going to undo addition. And the way that I undo addition is by subtraction. So I get 8x, I just bring that down. 3 minus 3 is 0, so that's gone, equals, and then 51 minus 3 is 48. Now when I do this, when I subtract in columns. Okay, so I line up minus 3 with the number that I'm subtracting it from. Okay, so I don't put minus 3 next to beneath the 8x because I'm not subtracting those. I'm subtracting these and these. This is on the left side, this is on the right side. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, so now we have 8 times x, 8x equals 48. So now I have to undo multiplication. And to undo that, what I do is I divide by 8. To undo multiplication, we divide. 8 is what we call a coefficient. That's the number next to the x, coefficient. So to move the coefficient, we multiply or divide. Usually, we end up dividing. 8 divided by 8 is 1, so we get 1x equals 48 divided by 8 is 6. And there's our answer. X is equal to 6. Now, how do I know that that works? Well, what I can do is I can go back to the equation, 8 times x plus 3. Let me do 8 times, I'll just use parentheses, 6 plus 3. Does that equal 51? So I hit enter, it says 51. So what that tells me is that this value 6 makes this equation true. So that is my solution. And that's it. Number 2. So now there's more stuff going on here in number 2. First thing I like to do is I take the equal sign and I just draw a line straight down. So I split it into a left side and a right side. Now, if you have things on one side that are the same kind of term, so like 4x plus 3x, we call those like terms. So say like terms. What I can do is combine those. In this case, I do 4x plus 3x, which is 7x. I can only do this if they're on the same side of the equation. Now we also have two constants. We have 13 and we have minus 8. So when I combine this, this is 13 subtract 8, which is positive 5. So plus 5 equals 180. Again, I can only do that if they're on the same side. Now, I can't say 5 plus 180. I'm not allowed to combine those because they're different sides, but I can move the 5. That's my constant. That's a positive 5. So to move a positive number, I'm going to subtract it to undo that. So we get 7x equals 180 minus 5 is 175. Now this is 7 times x. So to undo multiplication, I have to divide. 7 divided by 7 is 1, so we get x equals 175 divided by 7 is 25. As I'm going through this, feel free to pause it at any time. Go ahead and work the problem yourself and then see if you get the same answer I do. And again, I could check this. I could take 25, I could plug it back in for the x's, and I could see if this whole thing equals 180. Now number 3 is a little bit different because you have variables on both sides. You have 9x on the left, 7x on the right. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to move the variables to one side. I want to get them on the same side. Now I can either move 9x or I can move 7x. I'm going to move the 7x because it's a little bit smaller. Now to move that, that's a positive 7x. I'm going to go minus 7x, minus 7x on both sides. Notice how I line these up. I line my x's up. 9 minus 7 is 2x, plus 3, I just bring that down, equals, that's 0, minus 21, okay, or negative 21. All right, next step. Now this is just like the problems we did in number 1 and number 2. Let's move the constant, so we'll go minus 3, minus 3. We get 2x is equal to negative 24. That's 2 times x, so to undo that, let's divide by 2, and we get x is equal to negative 12. Now there's my answer. Just to show you the check on this, I would take negative 12 and I'd substitute it to the left side. I would do 9 times negative 12 plus 3, and that equals negative 105. Okay, so the left side here is negative 105. The question is the right side also negative 105? So I'm going to substitute it to 7 times x, and again my answer was negative 12. 7 times negative 12 minus 21. Now if it equals negative 105, that tells me that my answer is correct because it makes both sides the same. And it is, negative 105. So this is my check right here. That's how I know that this answer is good. X equals negative 12. All right, so 1, 2, 3. Let's take a look at number 4. All right, 4. Notice that you have a number outside these parentheses here. Now what that means, that's 4 times this whole thing, x minus 3. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute the 4. And so distribute, that just means you multiply it. The 4 has to multiply the x, so that's 4 times x. And the 4 is going to multiply the negative 3. So 4 times negative 3 is minus 12. Negative 12 equals 20. And now we have the same kind of problem that we had before. Let's move the negative 12. So to undo subtraction, we're going to go plus 12 plus 12. Remember, whatever you do to the left side, you do the same thing to the right. So we get 4x equals 32. The negative 12 plus 12 is 0. That's why I don't write it down. 4 times x is 32. To undo that, let's divide both sides by 4. We get x is equal to 8. And that's a good answer. Okay, again, I could check it, but I can tell you it's going to work. All right, number 5, you have a fraction equal to a fraction. This is what we call a proportion, and the way you solve a proportion is we cross multiply. We cross multiply. Now what that means is that we're going to multiply, it kind of looks like diagonals. The x minus 2, this whole thing, is going to multiply 20. So I kind of go across like this. Now I'm going to write it. I'm going to put the 20 in front of parentheses, x minus 2. The other cross product is 5 times 3x plus 4. So 5 times 3x plus 4. And what I have to be careful about, this is an equation. 20 times x minus 2 equals 5 times 3x plus 4. So there's still an equal sign here. Okay, so now what we'll do, let's distribute. So 20 times x is 20x. 20 times negative 2 is negative 40, or minus 40, equals, I always write the equals there. Now we're going to distribute the 5. 5 times 3x is 15x. 5 times positive 4 is positive 20. All right, so now at this point, we want to get the variables on the same side. 20x, 15x, I'm going to move the 15x because it's smaller. That's a positive 15x, so to undo that, I'm going to subtract it, minus 15x. So again, I line up my x's, and we get, this will be 5x minus 40 equals 20. Now let's move the constant, which is negative 40 minus 40. To undo that, let's go plus plus. So plus 40, and we get 5x equals 60. And the last step here, we divide by 5. And we get x is equal to 12. And that, again, is the solution. That's a good answer. Now, you may get decimals. I don't know if any of these ended up being decimals. You might get decimals, you might get fractions. There's nothing wrong with that. You just want to check and make sure that it works. All right, and the last one here on the front, number 6. This one looks a little different from number 5 because we have one fraction, but then you have this number 4. So what I'm going to do, though, is turn this into a proportion. Let's just put that over 1. The number 4 is the same thing as 4 divided by 1. Now, by doing that, when I have a proportion, I can cross multiply. So I can do 1 times 2x minus 6 equals, and then I'll do 7 times 4, which is 28. Now, 1 times anything is just the same thing back. 2x minus 6 equals 28, and then we'll go plus 6 plus 6. Let me draw my line down here. 2x is equal to 34. Last step, this is 2 times x. To undo that, we'll divide by 2. X equals 17, and that's a good answer. Okay, and that's the end of part 1. So go ahead and flip this over, and we'll go to part 2.